What if the thing you've been told to ignore your entire life, that quiet knowing in your chest, that inexplicable unease in a room full of smiling faces, was actually the most sophisticated psychological instrument known to science? Stay with me, because what Carl Jung discovered about highly sensitive people will permanently change how you understand your own mind. Most people call it a gut feeling. They dismiss it as anxiety. They tell you you're overthinking, but Jung had a different name for it entirely. He called it the inferior function rising, the unconscious mind surfacing what the conscious mind refuses to see. And in empaths and highly sensitive people, this function operates at a level most humans never access. Here's what nobody tells you. Your intuition isn't emotion, it's intelligence. And there are 3 specific moments when that intelligence becomes absolutely undeniable. By the time we reach the 3rd one, you'll understand why Jung believed HSPs carry something the modern world desperately needs and consistently tries to silence. You felt it. The person in front of you is saying all the right words, their story is perfectly logical, and yet something inside you pulls back, almost involuntarily, like a hand recoiling from a flame it hasn't touched yet. Carl Jung called this phenomenon unconscious perception. He discovered that the human psyche processes far more information than the conscious mind can register. But in highly sensitive people, that processing doesn't stay underground. It surfaces immediately, viscerally, unmistakably. Here's what's actually happening beneath the surface. The HSP nervous system is neurologically distinct. It processes stimuli more deeply, catches micro-expressions the average person filters out, registers tonal inconsistencies that disappear before the conscious mind can name them. What feels like a mysterious sixth sense is actually your brain running thousands of calculations per second and delivering the result directly to your body before your intellect has even asked the question. Jung understood that the body never lies. He called it somatic knowing, the wisdom stored not in the mind but in the muscles, the chest, the stomach. When an empath feels that inexplicable tightening around someone who seems perfectly fine on the surface, that isn't paranoia, that is data, refined, accumulated, extraordinarily precise data. And here's what makes this particular truth so devastating. The people who have dismissed your intuition the loudest have almost always been the ones it was warning you about. Jung saw this pattern repeatedly. He called it projection of the shadow. When someone works hardest to convince you not to trust your perception, it is precisely because your perception is accurate. You were never wrong. You were just taught to doubt yourself by the exact people who needed you to. This is the one that keeps empaths up at night. Everything looks fine from the outside. Nothing dramatic has happened, no argument, no confrontation, and yet something in you already knows. The connection has shifted. Something invisible has quietly left the room. Jung described this as the empath's access to what he called the collective field of relational energy. He believed that relationships exist not just between people, but in the psychological space they create together. And highly sensitive people don't just participate in that space. They read it, continuously, involuntarily, with extraordinary accuracy. What you're detecting isn't imaginary. It's the absence of genuine presence, the slight withdrawal behind the eyes, the fractional delay before warmth appears. The way someone's energy has become not hostile, not cold, but distant in a way that has no name in ordinary language. Most people need months of escalating conflict to reach the conclusion an empath reaches in a single moment of quiet clarity. Jung saw this not as emotional fragility, but as what he called temporal intuition, the ability to perceive the arc of something before it completes, to feel the ending while others are still reading the opening pages. And here is the painful paradox Jung identified. Because empaths sense endings early, they often begin grieving before the loss has officially arrived. People around them see someone mourning something that hasn't happened yet and call them dramatic, unstable, too sensitive. But the empath knows. And months later, when the thing they sensed finally becomes visible to everyone else, there is no comfort in being right. Only the quiet exhaustion of having carried the truth alone for so long. This is not weakness. Jung was unequivocal about this. The capacity to perceive what others cannot yet see is one of the rarest psychological gifts in human development. The tragedy is not the gift itself. The tragedy is how consistently the world punishes people for having it. This is the one nobody talks about, and it is the most important of all. There comes a moment, after enough betrayal, after enough silence, after enough of giving your depth to people who treated it as ordinary, when something inside the empath shifts. Not dramatically, not with anger or declaration. Quietly, irreversibly. Jung called this the moment of individuation, the point at which a person stops outsourcing their identity to external validation and begins to recognize something immovable within themselves. For most people, this process takes a lifetime and is never fully completed. For the HSP who has been pushed to their limits, it happens in a single crystalline moment of inner recognition. You realize, without needing anyone to confirm it, that what you carry is rare, that your capacity to feel deeply, to sense honestly, to love without performance, is not a defect to be managed, but a depth that most people will never access. You stop waiting for the person who misunderstood you to finally understand. You stop explaining your sensitivity to people who have decided it is a problem. You stop apologizing for the very thing that makes you extraordinary. Jung understood that this shift is not arrogance. It is what he called psychological homecoming, the return to one's authentic nature after years of exile. The empath who reaches this point becomes something genuinely unprecedented. They are no longer available for relationships that require them to be less. They are no longer moved by the approval of people who never truly saw them. They have stopped looking outward for the validation they have finally found within. And this, according to everything Jung spent his lifetime studying, is the most powerful state a human being can inhabit. Not the absence of sensitivity, but sensitivity that has found its own authority. Intuition that no longer needs permission to trust itself. The highly sensitive person who has walked through self-doubt, through dismissal, through the exhausting labor of feeling everything in a world that rewards numbness, that person doesn't become harder. They become clearer. They feel everything still, but they are no longer at the mercy of it. They see everything still, but they are no longer confused by what they see. They love still, but they have learned finally to include themselves. Jung believed that the most evolved psychological state is not the absence of feeling, but feeling held within unshakable self-knowledge. The awakened HSP embodies this completely. They are simultaneously the most open and the most protected person in any room. Open, because their sensitivity never closes. Protected, because they have finally learned to trust the one voice that has never once lied to them, their own.